I will begin with one of my favorite sayings from the Desert Fathers: a tree cannot bear fruit if it is often transplanted. In a world that constantly encourages us to chase the next thing, perhaps depth comes not from moving faster, but from staying still long enough to grow.
AJ, contrarian with an opinion, ideas and attitude.
AJ on AJ Weekly, the Not So Weekly podcast.
Today, we're traveling back almost 1,700 years, not to Rome, not to Athens, not to Jerusalem, but to a place almost nobody wanted to go: the Egyptian desert. Imagine giving up everything: your home, career, possessions, reputation, even your family, and then choosing to live alone. No entertainment, no newspapers, politics, television, no social media, just silence. Most people assume these men were running away from the world. I don't think they were. I think they were running toward a question: who are you when there's nothing left to distract you? Meet the Desert Fathers. Beginning around the 3rd century, Christians began leaving the cities and settling in the deserts of Egypt, Palestine, and Syria. Some lived alone, some formed small communities, some spent decades in caves, others survived in simple huts made from mud and reeds. To modernize, they seem extreme, but their goal wasn't punishment, it was observation. They wanted to understand the human condition, and they believed civilization made that almost impossible. Think about your average day. The alarm goes off. You check your phone, messages, news, politics, emails. By lunchtime, your brain has processed more information than many people encountered in weeks just a few centuries ago. The Desert Fathers believed that constant stimulation makes one thing almost impossible: knowing yourself. One of their most famous sayings is incredibly simple: go, sit in your cell. Your cell will teach you everything. That sounds strange today. How can sitting in a tiny room teach you anything? Because eventually, the entertainment runs out, the excuses disappear, and you're left alone with yourself, your fears, your regrets, your anger, your pride, and your desires. The conversation you've been avoiding your entire life finally begins. These monks identified recurring patterns of thought over 1,500 years before neuroscience. They noticed that certain thoughts kept returning: pride, envy, greed, anger, lust, despair, vanity. They didn't believe these thoughts defined a person. They believed they were visitors. The mistake wasn't having the thought. The mistake was inviting it to stay. Modern psychology speaks about cognitive habits. Mindfulness teaches observing thoughts without immediately reacting. The Desert Fathers reached a similar practical insight through years of silence and disciplined attention, even though they explained it in spiritual terms, different language. Surprisingly familiar observations. One story has always stayed with me. A young monk tells an elder, "I keep falling." The old monk replies, "Then get up." "I fall again." "Get up again." When does it end? When you die. It's brutally honest. Perfection isn't the goal. The practice of returning is. Here's another lesson. One elder was famous for his wisdom. People traveled hundreds of miles just to hear him speak. When they arrived, he often said almost nothing. Imagine that today. A podcast host who spends most of the episode silent. Maybe we've confused information with wisdom. The Desert Fathers believed wisdom wasn't measured by how much you could say. It was measured by how little you needed to. And then there's humility. One elder said, "The closer a person comes to God, the more they see their own faults." At first that sounds depressing, but think about any true expert. The beginner thinks they know everything. The master knows how much remains unknown. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking less about yourself. Now let's connect this to today. What would the Desert Fathers think of social media? Probably not that it's evil, but they would ask, who are you becoming because of it? Does it make you calmer, more patient, more truthful, more disciplined? Or does it constantly feed comparison, envy, anger, the need for approval, the fear of missing out? They would probably argue that technology doesn't create these weaknesses. It simply amplifies the ones already there. Here's what fascinates me most. These people didn't have MRI machines. They didn't understand neurons. They couldn't explain neurotransmitters. Yet many of their observations about the human mind still resonate, not because they performed experiments, because they spent thousands of hours observing themselves. Sometimes, carefully watching one human being can reveal truths that statistics alone cannot. There's another lesson hiding in these writings. Modern culture teaches us to constantly optimize. More productivity, more followers, more money, more success. The Desert Fathers asked a different question. What can you remove? What happens if you own less, need less, want less, need less applause, need less validation, need fewer distractions? Perhaps freedom isn't found by adding more. Perhaps it's found by needing less. Whether you're religious or not, their challenge still stands. Turn everything off. Sit quietly. No phone, no music, no conversation, just your thoughts for 10 minutes. If that's uncomfortable, ask yourself why. Maybe the desert isn't a place. Maybe it's a state of mind. The Desert Fathers weren't trying to escape humanity. They were trying to understand it. And after 17 centuries, their biggest question still echoes. When the noise finally stops, who are you? The revolution is being televised. Question is, are you watching?